New technique and share it. You can, if you have a question that you want to bring to the group about a project that you're doing, we can do that. So it's going to be basically bringing in your project, photographs, sharing, telling the new techniques. So that's what we're going to do next. Today I'm really pleased to have Paul Schranz here talking to us. I've known Paul for the past few years. I've taken some classes with him at Doña Ana Community College. I knew I liked him a lot. When I first took the class with him, and one of the things he said was, how many pictures of sunsets do you need to take?
Just one a day.
Just one a day. So with that in mind, Paul received his MFA from Northern Illinois University. He was a professor at Governor's State University for close to 30 years. He was an adjunct professor at the Doña Ana Community College for the past 4 or 5 years. And I'm going to let him tell you more about...
And then he quit.
I'm going to let him tell you what he's going to do next. But, you know, in these educational classes, basically what we do is a lot of technical stuff. Today you're going to hear the other side of it, is the conceptual part of photography. So, please, welcome.
I've been doing this for a long time. Dirt was new when I started. Dirt. I've been doing this seriously for 47 years. I've been a university professor I'm a professor emeritus for 40 some odd years now. And I just got done teaching, finally. I got it out of my system. But what I'm going to do, the talk I'm going to do today is not going to resonate on all of you. Some of you can let it. And just don't ask me to go home until I finish. But then I will. And here's the scary part of this. I'm going to tell you some things that are going to be somewhat controversial to you. And here's the sad part of it. I'm still going to be right. No, I'm serious. I mean, because this is not based on an opinion. This is based on an informed hierarchy of how we do things. Now, one of the things that people have asked about, how to put together a portfolio. And I'm going to go back a little bit further than that. Because when you start to talk about, portfolio is not just a collection of photographs, that's a collection of photographs. Portfolio usually means something somewhat thematic, and I'll get into that more in detail in a second. The biggest thing that happens is when we start to talk about fine art photography. Everybody thinks they're a fine art photographer. They're not. Okay. But the cool part of it is, if you say you are, you are. And I'll explain that in a minute too, because that sounds a little crazy, but nevertheless it's true. I've done this talk to a number of camera clubs. And I'm going to throw down a challenge to this camera club as well. The biggest response I've got was I did one in the spring at in Chandlands up in Albuquerque. And I have 15 people from that group that are now working on the projects that I'm going to suggest that you do. But they are how to develop this portfolio, okay? So anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about the hierarchy of art and what elevates a photograph to art. What makes a photograph something other than just a picture of something? And one of the things is, first of all, you always hear this term, you're like, people go, oh, he or she is just, they're so creative. They have so much talent. Okay, I can teach camera work to monkeys. If I was at the zoo in a month, I would do it. But that has nothing to do with it. You develop a style, you develop an idea, you develop a concept. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk about. Creative does not mean to copy. So something else must be part of the main criteria. This is a gentleman by the name of Marucci who photographs all of his stuff under ice. He freezes everything he photographs. Now, a lot of people think about the creative process. It has to be done in a nonlinear way. In fact, when we talk about thinking, we talk about thinking about something, not thinking of something. So if all you need to know about photography is what has been photographed, what process has been used, and that's just tell you it's a killer. As soon as somebody starts out saying, this is an HDR photograph, this is whatever, you killed it. All you did is just mention the process. The process should never, ever come first. Then you become a photo lemon. And you start doing the same photographs over and over and over again. When you ask yourself when you're looking at a single photograph, have I seen this before? You're going to come up with the answer is, yep, I have. How many times? 100, 200 times. You know, if I don't know how many of you have ever been to Paris, but if I said, you go to Paris, how many are going to photograph the Eiffel Tower?
Right.
Okay. Do you not know what it looks like? Can you not find one of the billions of photographs on this thing? It's crazy, but it's true. But there's a reason for that. That's because you're taking a photograph of remembrance of a trip. But the photograph itself is not significant because there's 1,000 of them out there. The other thing, and I just mentioned this about process, and then I'm also going to, fudge this a little bit later on when I show you something new. But the other thing is that people get crazy about different types of papers, different types of filters, different types of processes. And they will take a really bad photograph and make it into a really bad watercolor. Seriously, it does not change it. You cannot just add this to it and make it some mystical thing. There has to be some reason. And usually it's not just punching the button thing. I mean, I remember my first color photograph, because I remember everything. It was photographic. My first color photograph was of grass, and it was purple, but it was color, and I was really impressed, and so I got over that quick, but nevertheless, it's still part of the process. Even with good craft, and I noticed that your voting has craft first, okay? I would say do it the other way around. If it doesn't have impact, who cares about the craft? But, like I said, you do not have to listen to me. The check already cleared, right? No, I'm just kidding. All right. But then you're a good camera operator, and there's nothing wrong with saying this is a good photograph. Okay, it's well done. All the technical things are in there. The exposure is correct, everything else. But it's a good photograph. Now, if I asked you in a week of the photographs that you look at today to remember them in a week, you won't. You'll remember yours, but you won't remember the rest of them. Because there's something missing. And part of it is, and this is notorious, and I'm not jumping on anybody's case, but it's notorious for camera clubs because of the contest system to be redundant. For example, moonshot check, flower shot check, eye shot check, sunset check. And you have a checklist. It's almost like, and again, I apologize if anybody's a birder in here, but birders are the same way. They got their little book and they check things off when they see the birds that they need to see. So when we start to talk about moving photography up to a different level, what is this art? How is it made? Why is it made? There's many definitions of art. Okay? Who makes it? Why it was made? Everybody says beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I'm fine with that. But there's a lot of people with really bad taste out there think things are beautiful. All right? So, but art, when you start to look at art, art does have a hierarchy. Art does have a system. And it's not mythical. It's quite the opposite. First of all, and this is what I said before, art is defined by anyone who says it is. Okay? Somebody says, this is art. This is art. This is art. We don't have licenses. It's not brain surgery. You can say it's art. Next question, is it any good? That's where it falls apart. All right? Because if it's craft or decorative art or applied art or fine art, those are different levels within the hierarchy. How do we define this? And we can define it. We can define it objectively. What separates the various levels? Okay, context. This is the biggest thing I want to talk to you about today, context. That's the first thing that should be talked about when you're evaluating a photograph, the context of the photograph. The idea behind it. Does your photograph contain an idea, or is it just simply a photograph of a thing? I hate things. I hate nouns. Is the photographer's interpretation of the subject matter more than mere recording of the likeness? Because otherwise you just have a picture of something you saw, a reproduction of something you saw. How do you get beyond that? And you can. And you can. I'm going to show you it's very easy to do that if you want to. If you don't want to, that's another story. Did you make it to please as an audience? It's another thing you've got to be careful about. There was a time when artists really wanted to have a gallery representation. All right? That's not true anymore. People try to get, most artists I know now try to get 5 or 6 galleries throughout the world to show their work. Because if you have one gallery, that was the old classic, and you had a stable of artists, and you had this classic thing. So, okay, so you show an exhibit of work. And it goes over really well. We sell 60–70% of the show. That gallery director is a businessman. Next time you show, don't show anything different. Stay with it. And so it's almost like learning how to play the guitar. You find a note you want, you solder it. Seriously, it's very limited. And you got to be careful about that. I'm going to show you some problems that I've had to work through because of the influences that I've had and the people I've been around, who I love. But they've been somewhat of a disaster for me in some ways. This is a photograph of Dan Burkholder. It's from The Loss of Color from New Orleans after Katrina. Are you recording something that's pretty? And that's a classic. You ask that question, is it pretty? Okay. And I looked at photographs I saw today. If I was standing next to any of you and I saw what you were photographing, would your photograph be anything different than what I saw? And if the answer is no, then you're taking a picture of something. You're really not making a photograph. You're not making an expression. There is no context. All right? I'm standing next to you. I'm looking at this. You're looking at this. You have to make a recording of it. But what is your interference? What is it that you see in there that's different? Why are you making this photograph? So I'm saying that the photographer has to want to do something that has personal intent, that contains both emotional and intellectual. Photographers and artists are much like comedians. A good comedian is a smart person, really smart. They're highly intelligent. They have been, you can go back through history of tribes, and the tribal clown has always been highly intelligent. Okay? So you have to think about this. Now, we also have 2 types of photography now, and I'm going to show you how I've sort of evolved between those. There's the analytical photograph, which I have seen most of today. There's the collage images that I'm seeing now, and those are more of a synthetic kind of problem. The beauty of this, incidentally, painting is basically synthetic. You are making a painting of something that either by memory or from a photograph or something, but you're removed from that situation. We are a participatory sport. Photographers photograph in real time. We are part of it. If you are photographing a person, that is a very intimate act. If you're in the landscape, you are feeling that environment. You are feeling the heat, the rain, whatever else is going on. We participate. We do things in real time. The problem with that is at 3 o'clock in the morning, we can't exactly go out and photograph the sunset. Painters can paint it, but they're once removed. What has happened now, as a result of taking analytical photography and synthetic photography, combining these together, and also entering the dimension that we saw today, of the 4th dimension of time, we're able to do more things with the camera than any other art form ever. Everything new that's being done in the art world right now is being done using a lens. Everything. I don't care if painting's got photography in it. In fact, what's interesting, with the exception of schools being archaic and still having things like line items, this is a painting professor. You go to any good graduate school, it's not like that anymore. It's all mixed. Painters work with photography. Photography works with painters and sculptural pieces and all kinds of other things. It's mixed. It has to do with the expression, not defined by the medium. The other thing that happens, and this is something that happened to me, and I can't begin to tell you the hundreds of thousands of photographs I've looked at in my life, from some of the best names in photography, the most well-known names in photography, to beginning students. The singular image in photography doesn't do anything for me anymore. You know, I judged the contest downstairs last year, and what was nice about it is I really like when I start to see 2 or 3 photographs of the same person, because I can start to get a little bit of an idea of the philosophy behind what they're doing, as opposed to this is a good photograph, and that's pretty much what you're left judging. So if the singular photograph is kind of gone because we've done it a lot. We've done a lot of photographs of the same thing over and over and over again. What can we do about this? Okay, style is the way we decide how to do something with a combination of emotional and intellect. Process is the craft by which we make it. These are our time-lapse photographs. These are actually taken with 2 neutral density filters at daylight. They're 2 7x neutral density filters. And this is like a 20-second exposure at noon, which you can do. But it's a different thing. But you're now, the importance of this photograph is you can't see it. You can't see this photograph. You have to make this photograph. You have to anticipate what the event is going to be, but you cannot take this photograph. You have to make it. You can't see it without the camera. This is all new. See, the camera can show us stuff that we've never seen before. That's a really powerful tool. So the single photograph seems to have this communicative problem. It's very difficult to attach meaning to a single photograph. We can say it's a good photograph, we can say it's a technically good photograph, we can say it's a nice photograph, but what's it mean? And it's almost impossible to do that now. When people ask to look at a portfolio on levels, in galleries, any kind of exhibition, they are looking for something that shows the photographer's intent. Not a collection of just whatever, but the photographer's intent. What is that photographer's philosophy? What do they think is important? What values do they have? In other words, the photographs are not images of the subject. They are images of the photographer, more so than not. The photograph is looked at in a context. Now, the photograph could be historical, could be cultural, or could be artistic. I don't know if you ever saw The Deadliest Catch, but this is the guy who actually does the photographs for this. Can a single photograph bring a narrative? It's possible. You know, I'll tell you, remember, what was the name of the chimney that came down? The one out here. The circle. Yeah, okay. All right. Do you know how many photographs of that stupid chimney I've seen? It's just crazy. I mean, I got to the point where, and maybe one of you guys did it, but the one with Godzilla in it, I thought it was actually pretty good. Yeah. But I'm saying, it was just like, oh my God, these are all the same. I mean, it's an event, and that's fine, and the event's over with, and now what are you going to do with it? And it falls short. All right. But so if you have a knowledge of the context, we're all from this area. We all know what that thing is. We know it's been an eyesore forever, and it finally came down. We all went out and photographed the event. That's great, okay? But now it's over, and now what are you going to do? Most intents are shown by a body of work. This is Lori Nitch, who's a friend of mine from New York. This is done with an 8x10 view camera. Lori has a mixed degree in both photography and ceramics. This is a miniature. She builds these and photographs them with an 8x10 view camera. So in that working on the content, you have research, you have realization, and you have a resolution of questions. And I'm going to show you how to do that, because there is a simple formula if you want to take it on. Now, this is the part that I've been telling you that I've had problems with. I started out, I was very lucky to be part of the 3rd generation of West Coast photographers. I mean, I worked with Ansel Adams, I worked with Brett Weston. I mean, Brett was a friend of mine, Cole was a friend of mine. I didn't know Edward, he was dead before I got on the scene, but Brett's first portfolio, incidentally, was White Sands, New Mexico. You can look it up, but he did a portfolio of White Sands. These people were so important to me for all my life, and I got stuck in, there's this formula. My work is supposed to look like this work. And for the longest time, I mean, I've been breaking away gradually over a period of years, but for the longest time, that was really hard for me. And I went out to California in the spring, and I said goodbye. Look at a photograph of Point Lobos. And when I was at Point Lobos, I'm going like, I can do this all day long. They're good photographs, they don't mean anything. All right, so what can I possibly do? All right, just give me an example. John Sexton is a friend of mine also, and John was Ansel's last assistant. And John is, if you look at John's work, it's impeccable, it's beautiful, it's pristine, it looks just like Ansel's. I mean, John just cannot seem to get away from that. And I understand that now a little bit more. Influences can be good. And not only that, but you also have to understand that when you work, you have a mentor, and you break away from that mentor, they don't like that. Okay? So you've got to be fairly brave and courageous to get through this nonsense, but you get through it. I come from one of the most traditional photographic backgrounds. 4x5, 8x10, zone system photographs, all right? But I was also one of the first adapters. I mean, seriously, I was working with an Amiga 500. Okay, pixels the size of Lego blocks. I had a feeling it was going to go somewhere, but boy, it didn't look like it at the time. I'm like, what the heck is wrong with me? But now, we can do more things through digital, even traditional things, even scanning negatives. All this stuff can be done so much more. We have so much more technology and capability of expressing an image and a print than we ever had before. Many artists use their work to investigate their dark sides. This is Arthur Tress. I did an interview with Arthur Tress for National Public Radio Television back in 1982. Squirrely little guy. Lived in New York, had 9 locks on his door. But this was part of his demons and his portfolio and his work. If you look up Arthur Tress, you're going to be amazed. But this guy is really something. How much do you care about what people say about your work? Now, obviously, camera clubs, you want to have an exchange. You want people to talk about the work. And that's good. I'm going to give you some suggestions on what not to do about that in a little while. How is it accepted? Who accepts it? Who do you want to judge your work? All right? And if I show one of my complex photographs to somebody who has no idea what I'm doing, they're not going to like it, and I'm not going to care. How do you decide what recognition is important? Do you want the recognition of the camera club? Do you want the recognition? My mother, why don't you make pretty pictures anymore? Ah, oh, geez, Gloria, give me a break. But that's true. I mean, you get pressure from spouses and family and everything else. You're like, hey, what's wrong with you? What happened? Do you bump your head? No. So, but there is this defining of art, and I'm going to show you the portfolios in a minute. There is an objective hierarchy of how art is accepted in the professional art world. And it is considered, when evaluating the status, how fine an art is this? Sounds crazy, but true. Fine art, this is the highest form of art, though it's been murdered over the years by the academics. But it is not an object. That's number one. It's a concept. If it's a picture of something, a painting of something, I mean, I'm not, okay. Painting of flowers. There's another one. Okay? I don't know anything about the artist at all from looking at him. Nothing. It's another painting of flowers. Doesn't make any difference. So, what's the concept here? There isn't one. There isn't one. That's where it's going to fall from the fine art. It becomes a crafted photograph, not painting. They're not bad paintings, but they're not fine art. There's no concept behind it. And it also has the following characteristics. It has no other function than its own existence, and that includes decoration. It's not meant. You don't go buy fine art and say, here's a swatch of my couch. Do you have anything in a painting that will match this? You buy new furniture. You change the room. In fact, a work of fine art should provoke you. Every time you walk into that room, that work of art should cost you even a minute part of a second. And you acknowledge it. And it provokes you. If it doesn't provoke you, you got decoration. You got wallpaper with a frame. Images go beyond the recording of subject matter and reflect a personal view, not a replication of reality. This is a photograph of another good friend of mine, Julianne Koss, whose title is Premier Digital Imaging Evangelist for Adobe. And what she does, her degree is in psychology. She's also one of the best teachers. When I have to learn something new from Adobe, I get my information from Julianne. But, and she works with a lot of processes, and she's a really good photographer. But But you can see this is not a replication of a reality. What Julianne's job is, I was going to say this, Julianne's job is to say, you know what really cool, if this did this. And she talks to a bunch of engineers, and the engineers go, all right, that's what we do. This is another type, this is a photographer named Heidegger. And what she's done is, her concept is, these are doppelgangers. How she looks at herself, how she relates to an alternative of herself. So she does these things in these panels, and then she can obviously change the panels in a number of different ways. But that's not any different a process, really, than the moon phases. Fine art work is not meant to be pondered, and it is meant to be pondered and considered, not simply identified. If you identify it with a noun, you're dead. And I mean, I can go into a whole spiel about this, but we were taught this way. Remember flashcards? Okay, this is a duck. We learned that once we identify something, we were done. There was no question anymore. It's a duck, it's yellow, it's this thing. We just identified things and we're done. And that's one of the worst things that's ever happened in the educational system. We don't ask questions. We're looking for a photograph that doesn't have a simple, single explanation of its meaning. You know, photography was always talked about as a mirror. It's not. It's a looking glass. We can see things, we can photograph into the past, we can photograph into the future, we can photograph the insides of our minds. We can photograph our imagination. And we start out using analytical images, but we can now combine them into a variety of different ways. This is my proposal, and I'm going to show you portfolio development. In addition to your monthly themes, there should be another category, a year-long project. And the year-long project should be about conceptual development of an idea. And it's an extensive study into an idea and a conceptual approach. What do you like to photograph? What can you do to make what can the concept be that would be the umbrella part of this, so that the photographs would fit into that concept. And when you do that, you do this couple things. You have a separate meeting, because it can't be part of this. It's got to be a separate group. And what you do, the portfolio is going to be, and it's a good discipline thing to do. Portfolio is going to have 12 images in it at the end of the year. And what you do is you write an artist statement. Oh my God, I've been working. See, I'll give you the same thing I gave the people in Albuquerque is, you send me an artist statement, I'll work on it with you. Because most people can't write an artist statement to save their lives. I was born in an early age. I'm going to die. I'm somewhere in the middle. These are my photographs. Seriously, they're mind, or they got all this flowery language. Oh, I'm photographing the flow of life. And I'm like, the what? I mean, what are you doing? There's got to be something more specific. You have to understand something. We did not have an artist statement prior to the 70s. We didn't. You went to a show and there was a thing about the artist, about their background, things like this, but there wasn't an artist statement. That comes with postmodernism, where we have to explain everything. So you're going to write an artist statement, and you're going to bring in your first images for discussion. All right? Now you can bring in 12, you can bring in 3, you can bring in 4, whatever you bring in your images for discussion. Discussion is not a critique. If somebody says, I like it, throw something at them. I do. I used to have, I had a pile of erasers. Somebody said I liked it. This is last year, my last year, so it didn't make any difference. I was throwing erasers at students. And the reason being is, that doesn't say beans about it. Say something. If you have a negative response, give them the negative response. If you don't have a response at all, what does that say a lot? Okay? And then what you do then is the next meeting, you bring in new work. And you look at the new work. Let's say you brought in 6 the first time. You brought in 3 the next time. You don't take the 6 away, even if you hate them now. You don't take them away. So now you got 9. The next month, you finally get 12 or 13. Well, if there's 13, there's a number on here, 12. So one of them has to go out. So your work becomes in competition with you, with your own work, not anybody else, your own work. And over a period of time, that idea continues to develop. And here's the secret. If you show 2 photographs and one's better than the other one, do you think the better photograph pulls the second one up, or the second photograph pulls the first one down, because that's the answer. You show the best that you need to show, and that's it. All right? Now, if you have a photograph of rain and a rainbow, a sunset, okay? 1. If you get better at it, fine, but how many sunsets do you need? I mean, I got asked on a television show once, do you photograph sunset? I go, no, I have a cigar and a glass of Jack Daniels, and I sit out there and I watch it and I like it, but I don't photograph it, because I've seen it. Oh, by the way, there's gonna be another one tomorrow night. And then, but you ask for feedback, and seriously, everybody's got to have, I mean, this isn't you don't even have to have skin 7 layers thick to do this. Everybody has to understand that this is, your audience is in the same boat you are. They're there to try to give you their perception, right or wrong, and you can listen to them or not listen to them, but they're going to give you an idea of what they're seeing. And then when you get done, you rewrite your artist statement to reflect what you just did. The first one's kind of a proposal. The second one is, this is my body of work. This is what it means. Okay? And you never, I mean, you don't, like in the end, the last one, I am going to. No, you did it. Just own up to it. It's yours already. So, I'm going to show you how I've evolved with portfolios from the beginning to stuff that I got a show opening up in Chicago on Wednesday that I'm flying up for. But let me just show you this. So, the first portfolio I ever did, and I actually did this as a printed limited edition portfolio, it was called Aquatic Light. And Aquatic Light, again, this is part of being on the West Coast. Aquatic Light was the things that fascinated me most. And the one thing, of all the influences I had, the one person who was really important to me was Win Bullock. Because Win talked about time and space relationships. And that nobody else on the West Coast was talking about. They were all technique and blah, blah, blah. And Anson's Midnight Skies. But, so there was a thing about water and light. They moved. Water would freeze. Water could rush. There was a lot of different verbs that could be brought into this. So, and because it would reflect at certain times of the day, it would just change. It was something I could really adapt to and work with in terms of the concept. This is my very first photograph in 1974 at Point Lobos. It was 35 millimeter, which I gave up right afterwards. And I've shown this photograph to students. After I made this photograph at 1 second exposure, I made some that were like where it was stopped. And you know, because we have verbiage like capture a photograph, you know, we captured a photograph. So, and the fact that you don't use tripods, and therefore you're limited to all those speeds above 30th of a second. But, so they go to a waterfall. I captured it. I stopped it. And you look at it like, that's dumb. I mean, what attracts you to the waterfall? Rushing. It's a verb. And if you don't photograph rushing and you stop the water, I mean, I'm not saying you can't stop the water because that can still be effective, but by and large, think about it. That's the concept behind it. What is it you're photographing? The nice thing about Aquatic Light was I could do it almost any time of the day or night. But this is my first portfolio. This is way back in the 70s. And these were all done with black and white film and then scanned. My first introduction to digital cameras, oh God. But I'm all digital now. All digital all the time, and Sony only. I used to run Canon's third largest teaching school, which was out here in Mesilla. And I'm looking at technology and where these companies are going. Just trust me. Just trust me. Anyway, but you learn, and you do have, and I did have the zone system that I was using then, so I could obviously photograph this at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon and get the kinds of images that I wanted to. But one of the things that I liked about this was the fact that within this single image, there are so many elements of water at different clock rates. And I was aware of that when I was making the photograph. Sometimes your photographs lie. This is Youngstown, Ohio. If I put my shoe into it, it'd probably eat the bottom of my sole out, but I still formed. But it was a great photograph. You can see the image shot in here is a little bit better, but because the screen's a little bit bright, but you can can see the background now. But anyway, this is my concept, and I was working on these images for a long time. I mean, years and years that I worked on this, put the portfolio together. I have added some digital images since then. This is digital. This is York Beach in Maine. It's a black and white beach. I'm serious. I've got photographs that like this thing in color, and it looks the same. Really weird place. My students, Edward Weston said, I can walk out on the edge of this peninsula and I can put my camera down and I can make a photograph. And he did, and it wasn't good. But nevertheless, it was an Edward Weston photograph, so everybody went, so I'm driving along an interstate in Illinois, and my student said, yeah, we'll go do that. I said, all right, I will. So I got out of my car and I went down the snowbank, and there's a ditch on the side of the road, and it had fogged over, and this ice dome had formed. This is the first photograph. The other one's gone already, but anyway, and I did it. I'm never going to do that again. I just got lucky. So I wanted to do something else, and then I came up with, you can do a documentary project. It doesn't have to be landscape. This is the project I did, and believe it or not, I stole your tax dollars for this. I actually got grants to do this. This is a project called Armored Decor. And it started out, I'm driving through Gary, Indiana once, and I come across this photograph of Pray for Peace, we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us, courtesy of Dunkin' Donuts. My truck is up on the sidewalk, and the police are out after me. I said, look, just let me make the photograph. I'll move the truck, just trust me. So I made the photograph, and this was made with an old Rollie, obviously. But then it stayed there for a long time. It was a seed photograph, and nothing came from it. All of a sudden, 10 years later, I come across Bomb in the Park. Okay. This eventually became the First Army Museum. But they had brought the bomb in, and I'm just walking along in the woods, you know, no landscape, and I go, look, there's a bomb in the park. And I thought, okay, well, this is crazy, all right? So I got involved with how we use military weaponry as decoration. This is the attack of the killer willows. And what happens is, as your mind begins to open up on this thing, it was a comedic show. I mean, I've done other documentaries. I did one on the Americans Indians. I've done a number of different documentaries, but this project was a lot of fun because I just went to town and photographed these kinds of things where a military weapon is put into a weird situation, and people use it for extra decoration as well. They just pop the snowman against the cannon, and it's kind of cool. They don't even think about this. It's weird. And where these things were originally put, life around them has changed a lot as well. So the concept of military weaponry as decoration within an environment got to be interesting. It's a very safe picnic area. And nobody thinks about it. And not only that, what's really crazy is these are weapons, and yet some of them are in bondage. This has changed the tree. But you know, you're having a picnic out there, you're not paying any attention to this.
You don't put your trash in.
So what I'm saying, you see what I'm saying? It's not just a weapon. I was looking for something that was comedic. That was part of this joke of this thing. And these things are everywhere. I mean, you go into every little community in the world. I mean, you're like the American white picket fence. There you go. There's I mean, and a shore gun. I mean, this is kind of crazy, but this stuff was everywhere. And I couldn't get away from it for the longest time. And then I start realizing, you know, the armed forces have a sense of humor also. So this is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This is a Navy thing. This is going to make my day. I mean, it's kind of weird. And then I was in North Dakota at an Air Force base, and they said, don't photograph the bombers. I'm like, oh, okay, well, these guys are really secure. But anyway, so I went over there and I'm photographing, and they had this display of aircraft, and one of them was missing. They had moved it or whatever they were doing with it. So the Air Force, in their own little wisdom, came up with this. And this is one of the classic ones that came from. This is at a playground in Western Illinois. I mean, this is part of the playground equipment that we have in the Midwest. It's kind of weird. But you just find funny things. I mean, I found interesting because it was not meant to do this thing, but if you look at it in this weird environment, things really start to change. The last thing I did was a show I did a year and a half ago. I wanted to get away from this. This was my first break. And And these are photographs from what was called the California Influence. I wanted to do these things, I put them out as limited edition. I'm done. I'm not doing this work anymore at all, and I needed to get this out of my system. So these are photographs, these are mostly of landscapes, but they are, the concept behind this has to do with the technical concept of everything in there is in focus, from the nearest thing to the farthest thing. It's a full tonal range. It is all part of the West Coast photography, I'm saying syndrome, great. The philosophy of that whole group of people that I work with. And once I did this, I was done with it. Now, Point Lobos, California, if you ever get a chance to go there, fantastic place. It's where the volcanic range from Lassen, by the time the lava hit the ocean, it opens this thing up. It's an amazing place. And it's fascinating to be there. There's a place, Edward Weston's ashes were thrown there. It's actually called Weston Beach by the state of California. And it's just an amazing place. But I can do this all day long. I mean, it's a great place to photograph, but it's there a lot. This is up in Oregon. This photograph and the next two, which are two that I can usually show us it together. That's from Point Lobos. But this was a philosophical show, and it was something that I really wanted to get rid of and move on. Now, here it comes. All right, I was raised Catholic. Okay, I was a non-abused altar boy. And while I still believe a lot of things, I don't believe in pretty much any religion. So I did this thing called the Gnostic Narratives, and this was a show that I had in Santa Fe about 10 years ago. And these were works, this is my first collage type works that I was working on, where I was starting to do more of the synthetic kind of portfolios. And this one, and another one I think is in here, this is one of my responses to 9/11. You know, where I'm in New Mexico, and 9/11, I was in Chicago at the time 9/11 happened, and I had a son in 9/11 I couldn't reach. And so I put this together. It's basically a old gas station that had burned down, and there's like 4 different photographs, and plus the other thing on the top is this tar that I beveled and add red to it. But I had a response to it, and I really started to like the fact that through synthetic photography, I was able to express myself a lot better in a single image. And these photographs, you know, you go out and the old philosophy is you go out and you look for that exact moment where everything comes together. I don't have to do that so much anymore. I now have the option of just going out and making collections of stuff that I'm going to use later. And I have a lot of images pre-masked that I put into these things to work on. But these are really early ones. I mean, these are fairly low resolution, but they were all part of this Gnostic narrative kind of thing. And the next one is, you know, as a good Catholic, I was told about original sin and the burden of that. I didn't do anything, and yet I was getting blamed. And so this is my response. This is the burden of original sin. I actually photographed this deer with leg broken, laying on the side of the road, and years later used it in a photograph. Okay, I'm going to block the next one for a sec. Go to that one. And I buy my skulls, and I buy my birds, and I buy all this stuff on eBay. Seriously, I've got a great collection of weird stuff. I have a 2-headed chicken.
Oh, no.
Which I used in my final week day of school. So anyway, these are the things that, I mean, I really like this thing, and then I got involved with building the Preston Art Center, and that just sucked the life out of me, which a big project will do. So I kind of got away from it. This is another 9/11 photograph that I did. But I was able to use this thing in really, really different ways than what I had done in the past. Okay, the next photograph I'll show you later. All right. The second to the last thing I'm doing now is a group called Entropy. And I started this project about a year ago. I've had 2 shows now. One in Chicago that's coming up. I had a show in Redding, California 2 months ago. And Entropy consists of, I know that things, machine things, I've always liked photographing old things that were falling apart. But I wanted, there had to be something more. And I remember these things were once designed by engineers. And there were drawings and precision and everything else that went into this. So I would end up doing a superimposing mechanical drawings on this thing. I would use digital gobos to place light on, because light and shadows become the faster time element. All these things have to do with time. But this is the work I'm doing now, and I'm having a blast with it, and it's getting well received. It's a piece that I just did last week. That's in the show in Argonne. It's very different photography from me, from the things I've done in the past. But I like doing this, and these things in a single photograph can answer questions that a single analytic photograph doesn't do for me anymore. Okay, the other thing I'm going to invite you to, and I'm not going to go through them right now, but I started, okay, I've always had these weird kind of photographs. Maybe I'll show you one later, but I've had these weird photographs that I've taken. I ended up going to these gigantic plastic animals and stuff you see. I found where they had the molds for them laying out in a field. Acres and acres of these things. And so I photograph and I go like, well, it's not fine art, and it's interesting, and it's whimsical and things like this. So I did some treatment to it, and you can take it, it's on my webpage, it's called the Book of Whims. And the Book of Whims now has 20 plates. It's going to have about 100 when I get done. It's all those photographs that are whimsical, little crazy, stupid things that I've done in my life that don't make any, they're funny. So I've decided to put them into this concept book, and it's kind of interesting things to work with. Anyway, that's what I'm doing. That's how I evolved. And I offer you guys the challenge, and then I got a commercial in a minute. But are there any questions about this? You didn't ask me to leave, you didn't unplug me. I'm doing good.
If we get together a conceptual group like that, can we get you to participate?
I won't participate because, obviously my time is really precious to me, but I will participate to a level. First of all, I will look at the artist statements. Okay, they can email me the artist statements. Over a period of time, you can take it one day and everybody can send me JPEGs, and I'll give a response to it. I will come down periodically. I'm even going up to Albuquerque periodically. As long as I don't get shot, fine.
I have a question about the
Yes.
evolution of photography.
Yeah,
It seemed to be, I had an epiphany
yeah.
on yours. I see, for example, 20 years ago, the reproduction of what you're seeing, then all of a sudden the digital imaging, and then all of a sudden I'm seeing a creation of not of a new art form, but a combination of not pictures, but things.
It's
together.
a synthetic and analytical together.
Yeah.
Here's the crazy thing about this. Even teaching on the university level, I will tell you that I turned out printers far superior to Ansel Adams. But Ansel Adams did this back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And every once in a while Ansel had a flat photograph, believe it or not. But he was the first one to do it. The same thing like Edward Weston's shells. They were beautiful, but they were the first ones. But if everybody goes out and does shells now, chances are you do it long enough and hard enough, you're going to come up with something that's going to be better than what Edward Weston did. You need to understand that. You can be better than the history that came before you. We're not stuck in that group. And these things, the evolution of my work, just the fact that I got hold of, because of when, the understanding of time in my photographs, which has always been there, now it becomes even more. And now I want to do something in time that I can't see in real time. So I'm now getting my time elements together, clocks, if you would, and I'm putting these clocks together into images. And that is the power of our medium now. We can do all of these things. I'm not saying you can't do the things I did in California Influence, and if that's what you want to do, man, just do it. But if there is something that you want above and beyond that, you're going to reach. It's going to get ugly sometimes. you know? But if somebody says, yeah, I really like that. All right? Seriously. When I got done with teaching, one of the things I did was I was looking for land. I was going to build a studio. And I'm in Las Cruces, and they're trying to sell me like 4 or 5 acres. I go, look, I'm building something the size of a barber shop, and I'm not raising cattle. And then finally the guy says, well, we don't have any land. And I'm going, what the hell is this stuff I got here? I'm in the middle of nowhere. Tell me you don't have any land. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So I finally just destroyed my garage. And this is a continuous image right now. I've got skylights built into my garage, and it's a white I can't think of the paint right now, but epoxy paint floor. And that was also funny because I said, I want my floor painted white. Well, we do tan. It's light tan. It's lighter. It goes on the same way. So, but it's really kind of cool, and this is my work area that I've got, and it's pristine and it's wonderful. And I got one of those split air heat units on there thing. Everything in there is 5,500 degree Kelvin lights. The skylight it's all color corrected, and it's a lot of fun. I really like working in there. Anyway, before I go into the quick commercial, do you have any? Ask me questions, please. I can't repeat because we have a nice, healthy-minded child. I can't repeat what I told the people in Albuquerque, but I said I just came into your house and something slapped you, and you have no response to me whatsoever. I was there for an hour and a half asking questions. So they picked up on it. So ask questions. Yes?
I'm interested in the documentary, and my background's in photojournalism.
Okay.
And so the computer manipulation thing is interesting to me, but I don't
That's fine.
care to do it.
Cool.
So I'm more interested in doing this in an artistic point of view, but from a documentary viewpoint.
Okay.
You know, like the military.
All right. What interests you?
What interests me? Well, I'm a military spouse.
Okay.
And I have thought in the past about doing sort of a documentary of a year or two of what it's like to be an Army wife from my perspective, like that kind of thing.
Go do it. That's the idea. And but you're going to go on. Here's the people saying goodbye. Here's the people saying hello.
No, I don't want that.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But that's what the first thing people will look at.
Right.
But there's all this other thing. What happens when you're gone? Single person taking care of kids and all this other stuff that goes on. Plus military. If I remember correctly, from friends of mine who are in the military, it's not the best housing in the world.
Yeah.
All right? So I'm saying there's a lot of other limitations. And yes, getting into the meat of that, really showing people an expose of what that life is like, that makes it. That makes it. Anything else? Easy, people are easy. Come on.
I like your picture.
Throw something in there.
All right, I want to do a commercial and I'm going to answer. Yes?
Well, I do like, just kind of hearing what you've been presenting. I've been getting these magazines, The Outdoor Photographer, and kind of what you mentioned about the whole waterfall.
Yeah.
Not look beyond what you're seeing and try to capture it differently, whether it's, like you say, you can still make it interesting by doing like a really fast exposure.
Yeah.
That's not something the eye normally will see. Also, or slow it down considerably, once again, not something we normally see.
Right.
So it's same waterfall, just the
But you
perspective.
interpreted it.
Yeah, correct.
That's the difference.
Correct.
There's a human interaction with the subject matter.
Correct. So when you're mentioning that, I thought that's really interesting because I recall reading about that where they say you could still see the same stuff, but how are you looking at it differently where somebody will see it differently, not just where
Call
you guys
from
make
Amanda
a
Swenson.
picture and anybody can go out and do that. So that caught my attention
Good.
when you're covering that. Good.
For those of you who have a portfolio somewhat together, loosely, doesn't have to be as tight as what we're talking about now. For 28 years, we had a thing in California that was run by Al Weber. It was my last living mentor. And it was called The Rendezvous. And what it was we got together a group of photographers from all over the country every year for 4 days. And it wasn't a critique, it wasn't a present. I mean, everybody did a presentation of their work, and we got to an exchange. But it was a conversation that took place. It's a conversation among the photographers. And because Al has been ill, 3 of us have moved it to further east. And we're doing, this is our 2nd year that we're doing it in Capitan, New Mexico. Next year we're moving to Reno, Nevada, but right now we're doing it one more time in Capitan. And you do a presentation. We have there's discussions that take place with a variety of different people in the afternoon. We've got there's this military truck that takes us up 5 miles up into Capitan Gap, which is really kind of nice. This is about halfway through, looking back at Sierra Blanca, which is nice because you don't have to walk. But you also do not sit down in this truck. I found that out the hard way. But this is the kind of discussions that we have, and it's a very informal kind of thing. There's people from all over the place, with the exception of, I'm going to give you an example. This lady she's, when they have to ship Monets from one country to the other, she's the one who escorts them. She moves things around. And then we have one thing, if people wanted something on the history of photography, we're all sitting outside and there's a bunch of us that knew everybody. And this is Tom Schiff, who was my roommate in college. If you go to Cincinnati Art Museum, there's a museum called, Cincinnati Art Museum, and it's called, there's a Thomas R. Schiff wing. He didn't stay in photography. He made a ton of money. But he really does a lot of things for the arts. And so we had, he was the one who actually put up the money for the NPR show back in the 80s. So it was just an interesting group of people, and the discussion was very open. And if you're interested in doing we eat really well. It's okay, first of all, you have to understand, it's at a Bible camp, which kind of scared me to begin with, because I thought, us. But, and we were doing our presentations, which were varied in terms of whatever. And we also had some of the younger students actually photographing themselves au natural, outside in the au natural. And running around the Bible camp, which was fine. These people were very cool about it, and it was. But we had like chicken cordon bleu for dinner, and there was always a salad bar, and it was just really good stuff to do. And we stayed in this bunkhouse, and it was really nice. It was really clean. It was really great. And we did this thing for about $260 for Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and then we have these on Sunday. And we do these presentations, and your work is shown on 2 screens on the wall, and it's actually kind of a cool thing. If you're interested in it, we got some openings left. Anyway, that's the end of the commercial. Okay, what else you got? Thank you so much. You're welcome.
Thank you. I'm seeing like 2 things kind of that I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
One is that when you are taking the picture, you're allowing yourself to encounter what you're looking at.
Absolutely.
And then you're capturing that so that you don't know what that's going to be until you're actually there. The other I'm seeing is that you are thinking about something you would like to find, and you've got that preconceived in your mind, in your statement, but then you're looking for it. And so I'm seeing these as 2 different dynamics, but leading to the same thing, that it was going to produce something that is real art and thought-provoking, and that both of them are okay.
I'll be honest with you, the thing about this is, I love this. I mean, I've had a camera in my hand since I was a couple years old, and I just think that my ability to do, I mean, if I still came across something from, it was from where I was more sensitive to it in my past, I would still photograph it. It's not like I try to beat myself with chains, but just the fact that this has opened up so much for me, and the single photograph. I mean, you like your project. Can you do that in a single photograph?
No.
There you go. And that's the point. The concept needs more to work. But and I don't have any problem with the monthly shows. But this is for people who want to do this thing. Take it on as a year project, and you can always keep it to 12. And anything you bring in new goes in competition against those. And remember the rule: the second photograph pulls the first photograph down. All right, so always have the best photograph. And at the end of this thing, you're going to have a concise 12-print portfolio based on a concept. I mean, it can be more than 12, but let's keep it at 12, just to make it easy. You can go do a book if you want to. But it's just really kind of cool to do that. So anyway, I invite you, I've got business cards here, but it's Paul Schranz, no period, paulschranz.com. Go there and look at the stuff. I'm now producing new work every week after an 8-year hiatus. I'm working my tail off doing this stuff, and I'm loving it. And you know, but take a look at Book of Whims. It's kind of a weird little treat. Okay.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you so much.